What in the heck is this thing? Alright, so today we are talking about this interesting chart here. This is an X-Rite ColorChecker Video XL. Now, some of you may know what this is used for, some of you may not, but we are going to run through the basics of it today. Now, this one is the biggest one they make. They make a medium size, and then also they make a smaller pocket size, but I have the XL today that I borrowed from work, and this is the one we're going to use for today's demonstration. This is used so you can get your exposure correct, your colors accurate, and your white balance set when you're shooting in a flat or log format. You can use it in really any format, but it's most helpful when trying to correct footage that is shot in a flat profile, because this is going to have true color value and also true exposure value. So on the bottom you have true black, you have 50% gray, I believe you have 70% gray, and then at the top you have true white, and these are color accurate representations of green, teal, blue, purple, red, and yellow. This is what we're going to use to correct some log footage today, and I will walk you through the setup and how you're going to do it. So first of all, what you want to do is hold it in the frame. Now this is going to be tricky because you don't want really any reflections or shining of light on this, which I have not a good setup here, but you don't want reflection on the true black. And you also really don't want the white to have too much of a peaking value on it, which this one does a little bit, but for demonstration, this works perfectly fine. So you want to hold that up in the screen so that you have a good view of everything and have the light pretty even on the board. And then you really only need that for 1 or 2 seconds. And then from there, you're good. We're going to jump into Final Cut Pro, and I'm going to show you how you use this to correct your footage. All right, here we are in Final Cut Pro. I pre-recorded a few clips for this. I have this one shot in S-Log2, and so that's the one we're going to be using today. So we'll pull up Final Cut, and then we're going to pull up our color display so we can see all of our color charts, our histograms, vector scopes, so on and so forth. And so as you can see, we have the color chart in the frame, and we can see everything pretty well in there. So first, we're going to use this to adjust our exposure. How we want to do this and how we can get this to accurately read on charts is we're going to take a draw mask tool, pop it right on the clip, and then we're going to draw a mask right over this center area right here so that all we have showing in our clip are the white, gray, and black areas. Now, like I said, you really don't want any reflections in the black. I have one right there, which is a little throws me off a little bit, but it should work perfectly fine. Just do your best to get it as flat black as possible. So from here, I'm going to go to color wheels. That's how I like to adjust my exposure. So we're going to go over and we're going to look at this Luma Histogram. We can also use the color ones as well. But this is going to show us the white value, the 2 gray values, and the black value with these lines. And the cool thing about this chart is it makes it a lot easier to read because you get pretty defined lines to work with. So from here, what we want to do is we want to bring down, first of all, the shadows, so the blacks, to where that bottom bar is hitting the 0 value. And then as you can see, as I do that, that black area on the video is looking a lot more true to black when I do that. Then we're going to take our highlights, and usually the rule of thumb is bring that up to 100. I'm going to do that right now, but then once we take this mask off, I'm going to adjust it for the clip a little more. But then we're going to take our midtones right here, and we're going to kind of eyeball those right in the middle there. I like that, so we're going to save that right there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this mask off and see how we're looking. So we look here, scroll through our frame. This already is starting to look a little bit more contrasty compared to the log footage that we had before. So that has pretty much done its job. I may take those highlights down just a little bit, and then if I scroll to a place where there's skin tones, then I might bring those midtones down a bit. But I'm going to keep that pretty much there for the time being, and then we're going to go back to the chart. So now after we have the exposure corrected, we want to adjust the colors for saturation and color accuracy. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go back to our mask, turn on the draw mask, we're going to reset the parameter, and now we're going to use the draw mask tool on these colors over here on the side. These are going to be fully saturated and then matte versions of the colors. We're just going to kind of take it here. They have these cool points for you to click on to make it a little bit easier, but now we just have those color values right there. So now the only chart we need is our vector scope, so I'm going to set it to 1, vector scope right there, and then from here what we're going to be doing is trying to adjust these lines to be accurate to the colors that they're matched up to. So these are going to tell you basically the values of your red, magenta, blue, cyan, green, and yellow, and help you get those in the correct place. Now this line right here, this is not normally there, but if you look, I made the mistake of filming this with that accent light in the back. So we're gonna pretend like that's not there and go on like normal, because we still have our more defined lines here that we can use to get those colors in a place where we want them. So how we're gonna do this is we are going to use our Hue Saturation Curves, and this is what we're gonna use to get the colors in a place where we like them. So first and foremost, we're gonna make 6 points on the hue versus hue and the hue versus saturation. So on the red, the yellow, green, teal, blue, and magenta. And then on the hue versus saturation, same thing. So red, yellow, green, teal, blue, and magenta. So from here, we are going to adjust the color saturation and the hues to make them more accurate as to where they should be. So first and foremost, I'm going to start on the hue versus saturation so that I can get a little bit more color in there so I can visually see it as well. So these lines show where the color value is, and then those squares with the abbreviations of the colors is where the 100% saturation is on the scope. Now, you usually want these colors to be about 50% in their value, so we'll just have to get these lines about halfway to those squares to get it where it really needs to be. If we we'll start with the red, move that up to about 50%. We're going to take the yellow, about 50%, and different cameras are going to capture colors in a slightly different way, so you'll have to kind of eyeball this as well. Most of these need to be brought up a good amount, so we'll get that up. Blue a little bit less, and the magenta, but right there. Bring that green down, cyan up. So from here we have the colors saturated. As you can see in the chart, they're a lot more vibrant compared to what they were before. So here we actually need to correct the colors because, as you can tell, that's not really red, that's not a true magenta, they're a little bit off. So these lines should be pointing straight at the squares. That's where the true color is. So that's what we're going to use this hue versus hue chart for, and that's how we're going to correct that. So we'll start with red. These are going to be very small adjustments. So we just want that facing the box up a little bit on that. Yellow needs to go up a little bit more. Green is pretty accurate. We'll bring it down so it will face a little bit more towards that box. This one's very off the cyan, so we'll have to face that in as well. Blue's pretty accurate. We'll keep that there, and then magenta needs to be brought this way. Now, in theory, if we take these values, make sure we have those really where we need them. All right, so now with the hue and the saturation adjusted, we're gonna go back and we're gonna take off our mask. Now, if you look at it as I scroll through, the colors look a lot more accurate and a lot more saturated. Now, because I shot this in log, I shot exposed to the right, which basically is just a way of correcting your footage. So it's gonna be a little bit more bright. That's how I do it when using LUTs. But since we're not using LUTs here, I'm gonna go into the color wheels one more time, take the master, bring the master down. And then if you look here, look at that shot. So if we go in, turn off the color wheels and the hue and saturation, look how flat that image is, not very appealing. We turn on the hue saturation curves, and we also turn on the color wheels, and that is a pretty spot on image. I might go into the color wheels and turn down the highlights just a little bit. Maybe that's the midtones. There we go. Yeah, so in a sense, this color board, if I wouldn't have had that color chart from X-Rite, the ColorChecker, this would have been a lot harder to get those values right where they needed to be and 100% accurate or very close to it. So these color checkers are very valuable for photographers and also for videographers, especially when in a professional setting. So for situations where your color has to be super accurate, these charts are one of the only ways to get spot on in terms of your exposure, your color accuracy, your saturation, and your white balance. So with that being said, I think it's a phenomenal piece of gear to have in your filmmaking kit. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down in the description below. But that's going to be it for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.